French press, for many people, is the entry point to brewing better coffee at home. It's relatively simple to use, it's an attractive piece, and you only really need coffee and hot water. No need to buy a gooseneck kettle, no need to buy extra filters, and the French press will not only be the brewing vessel, but also be the serving vessel. And if you get an insulated carafe like this, then it'll keep your coffee warm too. To me, the only real problem with the French press is not the French press itself, but the fact that a really well-made stainless steel insulated one can be pretty expensive. Aside from that, on the market, there's a lot of kind of cheaply made, not very high quality presses. So if you punch the Freeling French press in the 17-ounce size, which is what this is, into Google, you'll find that the retail price is anywhere from like $80 and up. It's all over the place and it can be pretty steep. However, they're built like tanks and they pretty much last forever. So there's a lot you can find on eBay and just looking for used versions. I personally wouldn't pay $80 for one of these in this size. You can get bigger sizes for about the same amount of money. But even so, you can get a Chemex, some filters, and a stovetop kettle for about the same price. But if you're looking for a French press, then it's worth doing some digging to find a Freeling or another stainless steel insulated French press secondhand, because they are gonna last forever. And if you went ahead and bought something like the Bodum, which is arguably the classic French press with the glass beaker, if you break one or two of those, then replacing it a third time is gonna be more than the cost of a stainless steel press. And maybe because I've worked in restaurants that have the Bodum French presses, but they will break. They will definitely break if you're at all clumsy. Even if you're not using it a whole lot, eventually that thing's gonna go and you'll have to replace it at some point. It's also worth searching if this is your first piece of coffee equipment that you're buying to brew coffee with at home. That first impression can really have an effect on your experience and whether or not you continue to keep putting effort into brewing coffee at home. But anyways, enough about that. Let's get into the recipe. So I'm gonna present you guys with a couple different options and you can go with whatever feels best to you, feels most comfortable. This is a 17-ounce French press, which can hold about 500 grams of water after you have 30 grams of coffee in it. So I'm gonna stick with that ratio of 30 grams of coffee to 500 grams of water. Some recipes out there suggest going as coarse as possible for a French press, but with home grinders especially, going as coarse as you possibly can is going to have a wildly inconsistent result with the grind, making your coffee taste kind of sour and bitter and all of these weird kind of things that result from an uneven extraction all at the same time. If you're using a stepped grinder like the Baratza Encore, for example, I would go to the coarsest setting and then back up maybe 5 to 10 steps. So if there's 30 settings, maybe a 25 or 20, somewhere in that range will probably get you the best result. Set your timer once you start pouring for 4 minutes. Pour all the way to the top, or if you're weighing it, go up to 500 grams. Either way is fine, just make sure that you know how much water your French press can hold. At this point, I'm gonna let it sit. The coffee's gonna form a crust at the top, which is gonna keep a lot of the gases and a lot of the heat inside. After 4 minutes is up, you can put the top back on and press it if you'd like. If you drink that and it's a little bit too gritty, then take a spoon and break the top as if you were doing a cupping. So you'll break the top with your spoon, and then with 2 spoons, ideally, it's the easiest way to do it. Just skim across the top and grab everything that has been sitting there on the top of the French press. So at this point, this French press technique is adapted from James Hoffman, and I'll have a link to that below. Replace the top of the French press, but don't press it down. Don't press the plunger down. This is gonna achieve 2 things. 1, the sediment is gonna sink down to the bottom, resulting in a much cleaner cup. And 2, the coffee is gonna continue to extract very, very slowly, kind of like a cupping, because at this point, you've lost a little bit of temperature and all of the grounds have settled at the bottom. They're not in the mix like they were at the very beginning. If you have an insulated press, this is really handy because you can let it go for a really long time, and the longer you go, the more body and sweetness you're gonna get without having any added bitterness. So that's it. Whenever I'm making a French press, these are the steps that I take, or at least the options that I know I have available to me, depending on the time of day, what I have access to in the kitchen, whose kitchen I'm in, what kind of mood I'm in that day. If I'm like feeling a little impatient, I might not go through all this stuff, but it's totally up to you. Oh, and while we're on the subject of French press, it may seem kind of self-explanatory cleaning this thing, But a friend of mine showed me a way to clean up after cupping that really helps when cleaning a French press. To do this, you'll just need a strainer and fill the French press up with just a little bit of water, enough to cover the grounds, maybe have like an inch of water above it. Give it a little swirl, get some momentum going. And if you get this just right, the amount of water just right and the amount of turbulence just right, you can dump it out and pretty much get all the grounds out in one go. This little trick is exceptionally useful for cleaning up a dozen or so cupping bowls, but it's also really nice when the last thing that you want to clean up after breakfast is the French press. So that about does it for the French press. If you like this video, I hope that you can share it with somebody else. If you're into home espresso, I have something kind of cool for you up here that you might be interested in. And until the next time, see you later. One, the sediment is going to float down to the bottom. Sink down to the bottom. So that's it. That is what I do.